orange juice on her stuff.
Can't get that from here.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone. I think we're going here. Welcome to Communication and Policy Committee of the Concord School District. It is March 10th, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. My name is Cara Meeker. I am the chair of this committee. With me here tonight are fellow board members Jim Richards, Liz Boucher, and Barb Higgins. Also with us tonight, Superintendent Kathleen Murphy and Karen Fisher-Anderson. As you can see from the agenda, we have a few things to look at tonight, starting with policies 528, 528.1, 528.2. All of them relate to pregnancy and lactation. This is the first time we are seeing them officially here tonight, although they have been distributed a few months prior just to let us know that they were on deck. It's the first time we're going to actually get to really dig into them tonight. Also on the agenda tonight are policies 161 and 161.1. If you're like, why are these back on the agenda? If you'll remember, we moved them to first reading to the full board, which we did do last Monday. But since we approved them to go to the full board, a few more recommendations had come out from the New Hampshire School Board Association. So we are looking at those tonight to amend the policies for second reading. So the board will see those amendments when we see them next month. If you have any procedural questions, that is as far as I can get. So I would take advice if for some reason we needed to keep it in committee and not bring it to the full board, but I think we'll be fine there. And then it looks like we also just have a list of future policies coming our way that we will discuss. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Karen to kind of walk us through 528 and 528.1 and 528.2.
Great, thank you. Hi, everybody. All right, so 528. This is going to be pretty much a repeal and replace. You know, it's funny, I looked at 161 and 161.1, and I was all good to go with the changes and then the new changes. And then today I was looking at these, and I realized, oh, Lord, there were some very minor changes. What happened was we met on, I think, 9 February last time. And about 3 hours later, they released it. And I saw it the next morning. I'm surprised you didn't hear me. But hey, and you know what? We're still within the cycle, so I figure we'll get it right. We'll get it better than right. So on 528, this is a recommended policy, and there are some changes in here that are due mostly, as I said, to the new draft that just came out most recently on 2/9. I want to tell you, even though it's a repeal and replace, this is a very, both 528 and 528.1, I think you're going to see have a lot of the same language. In all honesty, though, I went back, we did 528, the existing policy, back in, Jim, I think you were on the board even then, back in 2021. And I have to tell you, there are a couple paragraphs in here that I think just speak more to the student perspective. And so if I can, I know it's not the way to highlight it or present it, but I'd like to, since this was the first time we're looking at this to talk about it as a draft, I thought, what the heck, maybe you could give me your ideas of whether you agree with me or you just say, nope, don't translate it. So I pretty much stuck to what New Hampshire School Board Association recommended, but then again, as I said, when I went back, there were things that I liked. So, all right, so paragraph 1 on 528 is just the purpose. I'm going to ask you some really, forgive me, on some format issues, but I just want to make sure we do this, I get just what you wanted. So in other words, in the first purpose place where it talks about intended to enable students who are pregnant, who have related medical conditions, to receive the accommodations to which they are, and to receive accommodations with Title IX of the Educational Amendment Act of 1972 and state law, blah, blah, blah. The yellow marks are my recommendations. Instead of receive the accommodations, I just thought we could say to receive accommodations instead to which they are. I got rid of that and just said consistent with. So I got rid of some of the extra verbiage. I don't know if you like it or you want to leave it alone.
I hear you. So my understanding is we're looking at the current, like the new draft of 528.
Correct, the one you should have been given.
Yes, and
Yeah.
so I guess I just didn't understand what the final thing you just said in terms of
Okay.
modifying it to.
Yep, okay, so the new, you see the yellow language, the highlights in that first paragraph?
The word to,
Two, and then consistent with.
so I don't have consistent.
We don't have
with.
consistent with.
I think that's where, all of a sudden I glitched, because we may be looking at something different.
Okay.
It says the same thing, Karen, so.
Right.
Karen
All right,
just-
do you
want- do you wanna
I
pause and-
understand you're
No,
picking
let's
on
just
the
not-
language, but
No, we can, it's just, there was some additional language, the way it, so the, okay, so.
that's your language, right, that you put in, not,
Yeah, it's getting rid of some superfluous language, I guess. Is that the right word? Superfluous?
Superfluous?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you've got to enable the accommodations to which they are entitled under,
To receive the accommodation.
to receive, and I got, to receive the accommodations to which they are entitled. I just wrote consistent with, to which they are entitled. So, to which they are entitled, we'll just leave it. Okay, if you're good with that? Okay, so that's your purpose. They then go on in that next paragraph and say that, obviously, the part that's yellow and crossed out, I thought was repetitive with the very next sentence. You don't treat students differently concerning current, potential, or past, blah, 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 and then we go on and say we don't discriminate against any students based on their current, potential, or past. So I recommend we delete the first sentence.
Yeah, it's like the same sentence twice.
Yeah, that's why I think it's repetitive, and that's why I put repetitive, and I recommended getting rid of one as redundant.
Well, so my one comment is that treating somebody different and discriminating against someone are two different things.
Can we
So-
put treat and
Right.
discriminate in one sentence?
Barb is
Leave the
already
treat,
where I'm
yeah,
headed. Yeah, which is that, not only do we not discriminate in this district, but we do not segregate, treat differently, it's sort of a catch-all for,
Yeah, so the district does not discriminate against or treat any student or treat different, oh wait, how do we do this?
the district does not
differently.
treat
Differently.
differently
Yeah.
nor discriminate against any student. And then that way we get the extra words out, but I think we keep in sort of that cultural norm, which is that all students are treated, that they're treated equally regardless of pregnancy status.
Can I just jump in just for a quick,
Get in
because
here.
I read
So
ahead.
We're workshopping.
Yeah, all right, in the purpose, I see to receive, but if we're gonna do it there, on policy 528.1, we'll have to put to receive. Because
The two's coming out.
is the two coming out or
That's why
staying
it's
in?
yellow.
no.
Oh, no, it is. It's staying
Two's going
Got it,
in.
never mind.
But
And where are
one
you
is,
doing
No, it's
it
actually,
too?
it is actually coming out.
oh, it's
but-
coming out? I don't care, it's just that the purpose in 528.1 and the purpose in 528 probably should
Be
read the
consistent.
same, consistent. It's a minor issue, but it just, one has receive and the other has to receive.
Yep.
Well, and one has the, and the other one doesn't.
Yeah, I know, the
So
other
why don't we
doesn't.
put a little pin in that?
Okay, thank
Until we
you.
get to 528.1, but I hear what you're saying.
Did you watch the
Yeah.
movie Bolt? Put a pin in it.
Yes.
There you go. So Cara, that sentence that you want, can you repeat it, the
The
second one?
district does not treat differently nor discriminate against any student based on the student's current political or past pregnancy or related conditions. And I see you've taken one of the ors out.
Right. Or, it seemed, again, I would have just handled it with a comma.
Okay.
Okay. Then, here, I'd like to have you go to the previous policy of 528, which y'all have a copy of, and have you look at the second paragraph under purpose on page 1. And this is one where it speaks more to the district's goal here, about pursuing their studies. And it just seems to apply. I mean, this is exactly what we say to personnel, almost word for word. But there's a different objective or goal in my mind, and I think we could use some of the older language that we put in there. If you all just want to go solely with a new one, that's fine too. But I think it speaks a little softer to. We want them to continue their studies, enjoy equal access. We want them to graduate on time and those kinds of things. So I recommend the second paragraph follow right underneath there, if you all like the current language. Make sense?
Does anybody have any strong feelings about that right now, or do you want to come back to it?
Nope.
Okay. I mean, I like where you're going with this, which is that it's not just that we are providing accommodations, but that we have intention in providing equal access. But just as you said, we're trying to minimize the number of words. So I'm gonna put a check mark by it, and then we can come back to it.
Yep.
Thank you.
And successfully graduate, because I think so many times, not so much now, but people get pregnant and they don't graduate. It's like they go away. And I think you can get pregnant and graduate
Absolutely.
on time with our help.
Nice.
So.
I like that. Thank you for that.
Yep. The definition section is pretty explanatory, just defines pregnancy, and then related medical conditions. And
Can you expand on why we removed parenting and reasonable accommodations?
I didn't. New Hampshire School Board did.
So, but I mean the proverbial we. Why the New Hampshire School Board Association recommended removing?
They just
definitions?
didn't. You know why? Wait a minute. We did a lot of. I'd have to go back and look at their original policy back then. When we created this, because as we read on, you're going to see that we went into a lot more kind of a tailored approach to how we handle it in our system. So I don't have a good answer for you on that, Cara, other than they just didn't. Those were the only two they defined.
Okay.
Well, I think also there's a difference is that New Hampshire School Board Association puts in later the reasonable
Yeah.
modifications.
So they sort of define it.
So they
without-
kind of
yeah.
define it later, which it wasn't before.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
Number C here, district and employee responsibilities upon notification. A second. It just outlines that that when a student or a person who has a legal right to act on behalf of the student, they inform the district, district employee or of a student's pregnancy or related medical conditions, you have to either provide, the employer will promptly provide myself, they'll provide, the student, my contact information and inform them that I can help them with regard to making sure that they're provided the accommodations, no sex discrimination, and ensure equal access to the district's educational programs and activities. Okay, so that's the notice to the students that comes out, and that's considered sort of a best practice. It was part of 2024 under Title IX, but it got struck.
So
But in the notes from New Hampshire School Board Association in this one, they say it's still a good practice for them to be told who I am, and that's how we've been doing it. We've had a couple where as soon as I find out, I reach out and say I'm me, and let me, if I can be of any help. I've met with them and their parent.
is sex discrimination still the right term?
Yes.
Okay.
It's used in the School Board Association.
Right. But I guess my question was that, because I feel like that definition was part of the 2024 updates to Title
was-
IX? Or does that definition stand even with the rollback?
The sex discrimination, it's still a form of sex discrimination. They just got rid of the harassment part.
Oh, the sex-based harassment?
Yes.
Okay. All right, great.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, let me back up a second. you guys, we're all moms here probably, other than Jim. Let's go back up if we could to related medical conditions. To related medical conditions. Just, I looked at the wording very closely, and going back to repetitiveness, the second sentence there, this includes prenatal versus antenatal. I looked that up. Antenatal is prior to birth. So what's the, prenatal? So again, part of me is like, I can just copy down the New Hampshire School Board verbiage, or we can test it, and I'm not sure how far you want me to go.
They said
They
pre
say
and ante, as opposed to pre and
prenatal
post?
/ antenatal and postpartum.
Oh, okay.
So I bring that up for your consideration. Okay. Okay. So that's under the definitions. I'm sorry, skip back. Okay, now we're going down to number C. Okay, the district employee responsibilities, which we just talked about. I didn't know if there were any questions there.
Nope.
Okay. Under that first paragraph, okay, I'd like you to go back, if you could, to page 2 of your old, the existing policy, 528, on page 2. And if you go down to the guidance section, and you go down to 1, 2, 3, 4, the paragraph that starts with staff members should not promise. That is one I wanted y'all to consider bringing over, because we need to put our kids on notice that you can't say, hey, if you tell me you're pregnant, I'm going to promise not to tell anybody. We need to be upfront about that. We have obligations there, and we need to let them know that potentially and you'll see in the next one underneath that, if they're under 16, we have to inform the New Hampshire DCYF. Okay, for both kids if they're under 16. So I wanted you to think about whether or not you wanted to bring that paragraph over, and the same with the one underneath it. And these are, again, the things that are in our old policy that I believe make it a little more friendly from an educational perspective. Okay, moving
So,
on.
just looking at that language in the second paragraph that you're advising on, with the legal age of consent, if a pregnant student is under the age of 16, the building principal or their designee must confirm that a district employee has contacted. So the district employee is the person, the mandatory reporter who has to contact the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services, or is it the principal that needs to confirm?
It's whoever, really, we all would have an obligation. So I can tell you that if the counselor is the first one who hears, which is often the case, the school counselor, they'll usually contact DCYF, just because of the age of consent. So
Sometimes you'll have a staff member who will reach out to the principal, maybe uncomfortable making sure they're doing the right thing, and the principal will make the call. But in conjunction with the teacher, that happens sometimes.
well, if you look down to right, keep going along that line. If a pregnant student is a minor, the building principal or their designee may need to contact. I'm not recommending you bring that one over because it's repetitive with what we just said.
Right.
But the big point is somebody has to, any of the mandatory reporters, and all of us are, because this is any individual under the statute or a credentialed educator, we have to contact them if they're under the age of 16, unfortunately. DCYF.
Probably the only person in the room that's actually, well, you might have done, did you teach high school ever? No. So I've actually been the teacher that finds this stuff out. And standard practice for us back when I was at the high school was say to the student, so I need to choose someone else, another staff member here. So who would you like me to bring into this conversation that would you feel comfortable with? And 99.9% of the time it was their guidance counselor. Or sometimes special ed person. But yeah, it's funny to see all these words. All it does is remind me of going through it. so much of it's common sense, but sadly not everyone
Yeah.
exercises
Well,
common
and I
sense.
mean, your perspective is going to be helpful because I certainly don't want to put something in policy that isn't in practice.
Right.
So we'll just,
Yeah.
please let us
Yeah.
know if this is inconsistent with your
Yeah.
experience. Sorry, go ahead, Karen.
Yep, sorry about that. So, let me look at previous page there. So those were the ones I wanted to carry over at that point in time.
Kathleen, do you have any perspective on carrying over that existing language?
No, I actually like the language,
Okay.
and I think it's wise language because there's been issues statewide around some of these topics that have not fared well because there wasn't good communication. And so by laying that out in that way, I think it's important.
Okay, thank you.
When you get to the top of page 2, and what we're looking at now in this policy, it then defines, okay, so in addition to telling the student about my existence, then any staff member who learns that a student is pregnant or is informed by such the student, they then have the obligation to notify either the guidance the guidance counselor, the principal, or myself. Okay. So do you understand that nuance? First, I tell them, okay, there are mechanisms or people who are here to help, and then they still have an obligation to report it up the chain. Okay. Okay, then it goes down and it talks about so we now know let's say hypothetically we now know when a student is pregnant, and it hits the question about can we withhold from a parent or a guardian regarding a student's pregnancy. And under the law, which is quoted there in accordance with our policy, only if we suspect an abuse, abandonment, or neglect would exist does normally the principal then make the decision. I'm sure we talked to Kathleen about it in consultation with the superintendent that, hey, we're not going to inform the parent. Okay, but you need a very careful exemption there. That's in the law. Okay.
Are there forms or documentation required as part of these other policies to make sure that it's documented that there was a choice not to notify?
I'm not aware of one, but.
Yeah, no, anything comes through on the form to me, but it's indicating that they have reached out to DCYF. There's not necessarily a call to the parent. Even in regular abuse cases, again, depending on the circumstances, I want to be very clear about that, I'm not trying to hold back any information.
Right.
But there are circumstances where we don't. But I don't have anything that they sign off on.
No.
I've never seen anything like that. Conversations are usually direct to the DCYF, who in turn will alert the police department.
Okay, great.
Well, and there'd be a copy of the report to DCYF.
Yeah, the paper
Yes.
trail really is
Oh,
through
yeah.
DCYF.
Yeah,
Right, I was
okay.
just gonna say,
it
there is
takes
a paper trail,
yes,
it's just
yes,
not.
yeah,
our
it takes it
paper
off.
trail.
Okay.
Yeah, the teacher or the whoever, the school part is the very beginning part, and then fortunately, if there's those awful circumstances, it goes into the,
Yeah, they notify
Hands the authorities.
DCYF, and then they're supposed to, each by school, then sends a copy of that report up to SAU, and we keep them by school.
You keep them, okay.
Yeah, we have
they're
a
on
file for
here.
each one that, for each school, there's a file for every year. So we have,
Yeah, okay, thank you.
that's available. It's not
Okay, and then
available
right
everywhere.
after that wording about, hey, we're gonna be in compliance and we're gonna notify, except for that exception, if you go back on the very bottom of page 2 of 3 on our current policy, that very last line, it says, if there's gonna be a parental or guardian notification, it's made by the building principal or their designee after consideration of all the pertinent information. So that's the next follow-on step. Okay?
Sorry, you lost me again. Where are you?
Very
I'm
bottom
on
of the
page
page.
2 of 3
Of
of
this one?
Yeah,
Okay,
of our
gotcha.
current one, right at the bottom. So it just falls on to say, okay, we have to inform unless we have that exception, and this is who normally informs.
So you would
It's
like to
normal.
add this language into the.
Correct, right at the end of that. Okay?
So can I ask a question?
Sure.
So the principal's doing the informing, but if you go back, the employee or the Title IX coordinator are the ones who reasonably believe and a reasonable, prudent person would believe. So they're the ones who make the decision on whether it's a reasonably prudent person or.
Well, you'd usually take
It's a
all.
little fluffy
You
right
take
there.
it to the principal ultimately, who would decide based
Okay,
on.
but it doesn't say we take it to the principal, it just says that they believe it. And then
that would be
the
made-
principal's response, if you add that thing, that last item 5 on your sheet, which no one else can see, but the bottom of 2 of 3.
Yeah.
Then we'd have to merge that in there and just somewhere along the line, it's gotta be communicated and the decision needs to be made by whoever's making that call,
In my
building
limited
principal.
practice, it's usually the principal who's making these calls on pregnancy. With the, either the guidance counselor present, to let them know.
okay.
They always, of course, ask the student, do your parents know first? Because we, again, don't wanna trigger or upset the student, but that's usually what happens. And we've been lucky, usually the parents already know.
Usually.
So, but I just thought it lays out the process and it's clear who's going to inform. Okay? All right. Then specific actions to prevent discrimination and ensure equal access. Again, I just go down, I look to see, how far along they are, you make reasonable modifications to any kind of practices or procedures to make sure that they can still access their education. That's what that paragraph is about. And talk about our obligations to them. We can modify, we'll get down to it more, but that's where we talk about our obligations and provide, hey, we want to help. Getting back to that first paragraph, we want to assist you in finishing up.
Can I ask just,
Yep.
it's minor, but why did we used to do accommodations, but now we do modifications, but in the case of an employee, we do accommodations? We do accommodations in the past, now we do modifications for the students, and now we do accommodations for staff.
And
It
sometimes
just
we do
seems
support
like
measures.
it just seems
Special ed
like
teachers,
this,
the same thing.
Yeah.
it just seems like the two different people at the School Board Association were writing this or something.
Yeah.
Well, although
Consistent.
special ed speaking, accommodations are manipulating the environment, modifications are changing the curriculum. Like if I had to find a difference, I feel like accommodations would make more sense for a pregnant student
It
than
seems to me
modification.
that breaks for food or bathroom or something
That's
is
an
an accommodation,
accommodation.
not a modification to
Yeah.
a program. But
Right.
like I said, we all understand what it means. It's just weird that they would do that and change it back again.
We're gonna
Well, we can,
consult Google for a second here.
Well, this is just saying accommodation changes how a student learns the material, and modification changes what a student is taught or expected to learn.
Right, so you're modifying the information versus
The way
modifying
you receive it.
how you, yeah.
Yes, but examples of modifications include breaks to attend to health, access to changes in schedule, allowing students to sit or stand.
So it
It's
seemed like
kind of more
accommodations.
accommodations to me,
Yeah.
but
I agree.
Because if I were to say to a parent, what accommodation's gonna make, well, I need a front row seat, I need a ramp.
need a footstool, I need-
a highlight, what modifications do we need? Well, he needs to hear it instead of see it, like the accommodations are accommodating the environment, and the modifications are changing the manner.
shorter,
Yeah.
shorter lesson segments would be a modification,
Yeah.
but not necessarily accommodation.
Right.
But I'm not, I just would call it accommodations. I don't know why they switched
Yeah.
it.
When we have accommodations is the language and the purpose. So I would agree. Maybe we could do a quick sort of document sweep,
Just for the sake of
because we've got,
consistency.
lactation, accommodations.
And it's accommodations, New Hampshire School Board Association. I would just say,
I would just say accommodation.
I would agree with you,
Let's
all the way
modify our thought
down.
process here and use
Yes.
accommodations.
And they
Okay.
use it in the beginning of their
Yeah.
policy purpose, just
That
like
was a good
this.
catch, though.
Just,
Yeah,
no, I
it
just
makes
want to
sense.
make it clear and simple
Right.
and easy and
Right.
consistent, so.
Well, and you're pregnant, how can we accommodate you? Like,
we also use support measures. Supportive measures. So there's
So I
another
have
one.
two noted, I have the second paragraph and the fourth paragraph under D, where I've swapped out modifications for
Yeah,
accommodations.
that's where it is.
Okay.
Okay. Reasonable. All right, so can I ask you to all take a look at under your specific actions to prevent discrimination and ensure access? I found the second paragraph there to be redundant with the first one.
When the student. Well, I guess it sort of talks about what the district's gonna do once they find out.
Right.
Well, that was the language they put forth. I couldn't.
It seems like it could be a shorter sentence.
Yeah, the same sort of things. But if you're all good with it, we'll just leave it.
I'm good with it. I mean, I think they're addressing slightly different things, which is the first paragraph is more about informing
Okay.
and providing information, and then that flags you, the Title IX coordinator, to ensure equal access from this moment forward. And then the second paragraph deals with the reasonable modifications that will take place as part of that process. So while there is some redundancy, I think they're trying to get at two different
Okay.
things.
Great.
I would say the final sentence is super redundant. The Title IX coordinator will help the student access these rights.
Yeah, I agree.
So we can get
We
rid of
can
the
get rid
final
of that.
sentence, because you not only will help, you are obligated
Right.
by law to help.
Exactly.
Which is stated in the first paragraph.
Okay. All right, great. All right, then going down to the reasonable accommodations, the only thing I want to point out here, some of them differ a little bit from what we had in our old policy, but it just says not limited to the following, so I was less concerned about that. But just from a format thing, Cara, I couldn't remember. It seemed to me that when we are setting out these specific examples, we start the sentence with capital. So I want to stay
Yep.
consistent.
I agree.
Okay. The other thing on number 9 I wanted to point out to you, it talks about being able to make modifications to policies, practices, or procedures. We can certainly modify practices and procedures on a daily basis, but it's up to you all to modify policy. So I wasn't sure you wanted to include policy.
You're good, take it out.
Okay. All right. Okay, I inserted on the next page at the very top, I'm trying to be consistent, always putting board before policy. The voluntary leave of absence, just it's pretty, clearly stated if they can take a leave of if they qualify for a longer one, they can take a voluntary leave of absence under that policy, and then be reinstated in their academic status, extracurricular status, prior to when they left. Supporting documentation, again, we don't require, we're gonna treat pregnancy or related conditions from pregnancy in the same manner as other temporary conditions. So we don't have to require additional documentation from doctors. Can they go to gym class? Can they, do so and so forth? And there's another reasonable modification in there in the second paragraph that will change to accommodation. Is that correct? Okay. When it's obvious, you don't need a doctor's note, such as when they're pregnant and they need a bigger desk, more water, restroom breaks, postpartum, have lactation needs. We're not going to ask for supporting documentation from the doctor. And then we don't have to ask the student, we should not ask them to certify that they're physically able to participate in class programs or extracurricular activities unless everyone else has to do so as well. And then any violations of complaints about this process should start under policy 415. That's pretty much, those were the changes. Otherwise, it's pretty word for word of what they came up with.
Back to G, complaints or reports.
Yep.
Complaints or reports regarding violations of this policy should be made according to the procedures found in policy 415.
Yep.
Should be. Are there other options?
Potentially, it could be 161, discrimination.
Right.
So we could include, but it says, I believe it said, they had in here, in the first instance.
Right, which is
But I took
strange.
out.
Yeah.
So, but if you want to put them both in, we could, either one or both.
I mean, we're directing, like, let's say somebody's reading this policy, they wanna know, I wanna make a complaint. So they need to go to policy 415
Correct. Or they can go to
or
161.
161. I think we should.
Then you
have
could,
it.
should, yeah, if they could
Okay.
go to either, then you should include them both.
Okay.
So board policy 415 or 161.
We still wanna say should be made.
Can be made?
Yes. For both of them, can be. They can go to either one. That is it on 528.
Should we go back to the old policy and look to see what to add? Are we in agreement that we're adding all
Yeah,
of the?
let's go back to the original policy. So we have the second paragraph of the purpose statement. Which I'm fine with, because it's sort of intention driven. The only thing is, I don't think we can say, I don't know if we'll say pregnant and parenting students, because we seem to have removed sort of the parenting piece.
Yep.
So it would need to say is committed to supporting pregnant students. I don't even know if we need to acknowledge the related medical conditions there, but supporting all students.
I think it was included because it's part of the title. You know, it's not only during the pregnancy, but it's that post and
I was gonna say that like 6 to 8 weeks where,
up to a year, believe it or not, and lactation, they're gonna learn,
oh, yeah, no, that's true.
so.
Well, you could say pre and postpartum students. Or anti and
Panty,
peri.
panty pre.
The other, I promise this will be my last one, the other paragraph I really liked in our existing policy that I wanted to put in sort of as a 2A is the second, go to page 3 of 3 on our current policy where, and again, this goes back to the education and then the high school piece of it. Encourage to work with teachers and other schools, support to devise a plan for how to best address their needs, anticipating absences, minimizing academic impact, assuming, return to normal activities, blah, blah, blah. It's much more tailored to what we do in the school for a student.
To that point, would you include the prior paragraph, which is not in the new policy in any way?
Yeah, I had that down as paragraph 6. So I like that one as well. Relative to medical,
Just
we're
that
educating them.
Yeah, that school staff shall provide pregnant students and new parents with information relative to medical health facilities.
We're getting now we're adding the whole policy back.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a lot
Well,
of them.
Do we, if we want our teachers and staff to do that, then it should be in. If we don't really care if they do it, then it should be out.
Well, it's a nice thing, believe it or not, for them to be able to work with the kids. So, I'm concerned about where my child can be. Well, there's a child care center right across the street.
So everybody,
This gets a little dicey.
yeah, so there are gonna be certain facilities, let's say I personally would not recommend
Oh,
a
see,
minor be referred to.
Is
Yeah.
that really the role of our teachers? I don't think so.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
this
we're getting into
belongs in
parental.
My point is
with
if
the
we,
nurses
Take it
and the
out. Okay.
appropriate
well, then we
staff.
should,
Yeah.
so
I'm
we're
not-
not doing it.
Well, I mean,
I mean, if
think
we're not, no, I don't have a problem if we're not doing it and we determine that we aren't the people to do it. I just want to make sure that our policy, it's in our policy if we want them to do it, and if we want them not to do
Right.
it, it should not be in our policy.
That's
We
right.
just need to be consistent. The one thing I wouldn't want is that our policy is to not have someone do that and then have teachers do it. Then we're gonna get into trouble.
So you're saying be explicit language? Do
No, it
not
doesn't have to
provide
be
this
explicit.
information?
We just have to make sure that actions follow.
So give me a
policy.
real life example of this, because again, in thinking about when you spend 9 months as a teacher watching one of your students grow a baby, there's logical conversations that happen all the time. Now, I was a health educator, so trust me, we talk about these things all the time. But then these babies are born, the conversations happen all the time anyway. They're just such a natural part of But no one ever told me I had to sit with a student and say, you can do this, this, and this. Students ask questions, you refer them, send them to somebody that can answer it. Are you getting that help at home?
Right.
Like, I don't even know that this needs to be policy behavior.
Right,
mean-
and the nurses are also big on the community health services. I mean, they
It's-
can't
That
make
would be better.
recommendations.
That to me
They
is
can't
where
make
it belongs.
recommendations, but that was in
Yeah.
there as one of the things that, you know, we put the information out and they take it or they don't. But
But
if
as
we-
a teacher, you know, I mean, yeah, you were a little different because you taught health, but most teachers, the social studies teacher or the math teacher may be very reticent about getting involved. I mean, they're
know.
not sure they're gonna say the right thing. Have you spoken to the nurse? Have you talked to your guidance counselor? That's where it belongs.
Okay. I just wanna make sure teachers
No,
are
I-
getting the guidance that they
If
need.
if there was to
Because
be
if we
anything.
don't want them to do it, I don't want them to do it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
The only
right.
thing that could be policy, if it had to be, would be that, if a student has a question, teachers send them in the right direction.
Right,
I mean,
that-
basically, that's,
I agree, because I'm thinking of the real life scenario
Right.
of a teacher who has had a personal experience with, say, adoption. So then they bring up adoption with the minor. Now this minor thinks that the teacher's telling them,
Right.
you know. So these are very sensitive conversations that, number one, I personally wouldn't want it in policy that they should be providing that sort of care unless they are a health teacher or a nurse or someone equipped
Right.
to provide neutral, supported information. And I would go so far as to recommend, like, if we did have anything in policy, it should say that school staff are not responsible for
Yeah.
providing that information and should point them in
Yes.
the direction of a
Oh,
health
yeah.
professional, always. So that would be the language I would recommend. And, I mean, we're getting into common sense here.
I know, so much of it is, like I look at all these words and I'm like,
Yeah.
I never read this policy before I did anything I did with all the pregnant students I dealt with, and,
But every teacher will interpret their role
Yes.
and what they say to students in different ways, and
Yes.
that could be very
Right.
difficult.
right, yeah, when somebody dives into something.
Right.
Do we want to consider maybe sort of flipping this existing language to school staff shall direct pregnant students or students with pregnant students or with pregnancy-related issues to,
Appropriate social and medical personnel? Or-
yeah, like I would ask the district to name who the referral should be, and then that way it takes the pressure off of them. It gives them, you know, like if somebody walked up to me and said, I need help on this, I'd be like, I will happily point you
Yes, yes.
to the right person to talk to, because I am not the right person to
Because
talk
we
to.
have wellness coordinators, we have guidance counselors, we have school nurses,
Yeah,
all of whom have community connections that your average teacher wouldn't have.
Right, right.
so would you guys come back to us with
Pregnant
a
students.
proposal on that language for
Sure.
next time?
Got it. Okey-doke. Right. Sorry for the confusion going back and forth, but it's
good to see it that
I think this is a good, there were good parts of this that I thought, oh, that's softer, but, and that was it on that one.
I think, you know, the difference between these two policies, as I see them, is the new one is stripping it down to what is legal, what we must provide based on federal law, and then what was just a little more like, how are we relating to pregnant students? How are we giving them guidelines on support, education, parenting, you know, not tips, but, you know, it just seems a little more like invested in what's going on with that student, whereas the new one's a little more bare bones. And I can sense that you would like to bring a little bit more of that
Yes,
sort
if,
of
what I,
holistic approach back into the new policy.
a little bit of it, not too, I mean, you're right about, we don't need to be making specific recommendations, and our teachers already are way overtasked, but,
Right.
I propose, if it's okay, if you're okay with my recommended pulling a few of these back and forth, I'll go back, I'll put together one single policy, for their next meeting, and it'll be ready for you to look at, and hopefully you'll like what I did. On that last, just so I get your guidance, on the last page of our existing policy where I talked about that paragraph that starts with pregnant We'll get rid of and parenting students are encouraged to work with teachers, anticipating needs for absences, minimizing. I would stop that after efficiently and comfortably as possible, period. Because we've already talked about that last sentence in our current policy.
Well, can that paragraph be incorporated somehow with that second paragraph?
Yeah, I would make it 2A. That's
So
my
like the
thought.
the
second
purpose?
paragraph of the purpose is like somewhat, this just expands on that. So
But
can
I
it
think
just
it's-
condense I mean, there's just so much language.
Yeah.
But isn't it redundant with based on a student's individualized needs in consultation with the student, the district will make reasonable modifications to the this is more, a little more cold or
Well, that's
language,
the
but
same.
it says about the exact same
Yeah.
thing.
Okay.
As far as redundancy goes, I just think it's a little redundant. Although I think it's more, yeah, it's a more legal
Legal.
way of saying those things.
Right, so the paragraph you're talking about at the very end, you know, unless we are instructing teachers to create a plan, then I don't know if this is helpful.
The plan, well, maybe the word plan is too much. It's basically make sure that they plan ahead for medical appointments. You know, they may be out sick because they're not feeling well. You know, all those kinds of things. So building that into a potential so they can continue their studies, even though they may not be there all the time. You know, to keep them on track. That was the intent there.
I guess it needs is not defined, because is it pregnancy needs, or is it school-related needs? I mean,
Right.
I wouldn't want to get, someone could look at that as, yes,
Yeah, I think it has to be tied to their pregnancy or related medical conditions.
Yeah,
But if it's too in-depth,
I think what the intention is to scale it back
okay.
and to not involve teachers so much in the pregnancy process, other than to make the accommodations that are legally required. Is that what we want? You know, like.
I think it's all we can enforce in a policy.
Right,
I think to add anything else, we're adding what teachers have to do,
right.
which
I
is
agree.
what's good about a cold policy. But what the reality is, if a student feels about a teacher enough to share this, then there's likely already a bit of a relationship, and the softer things will follow. But I don't think we can policy behavior in terms of how you handle it when they come to you and how I handle it when they come to me.
I agree. So I'm okay with leaving it out. I think we want to keep it
Got it.
streamlined.
okey-doke.
Because when I see words like this, when, you know, devise a plan, that says, in my mind, that a teacher now is sort of on
On the planning team.
On the planning team.
baby.
Right.
I'm just
Planning team of what? I don't even know what they're planning. They're planning
Yeah.
pregnancy?
They're planning when they're gonna be out.
Appointments.
I remember the first time I went to a doctor when I was pregnant, and they gave me the schedule for all my doctor's appointments, and I was like, no, I don't like this plan.
Yeah, I'm not gonna make it.
So believe me, they will get plenty of plans in there.
All right,
All right, thank you for that. And so you're gonna bring this back with the combined language
will do. Yep,
for clean policy.
and I'll have it for March 31st, I think? Yeah, I'll have it, so it'll be a quick turn.
Right. Question for the committee, do we want to see any redlining or highlights, or do we feel good about just seeing a clean copy, since it's technically an all-new policy? Do you guys want to see strikes and highlights?
Because of the length of the policy,
Just
I'm fine with
because
seeing
it's
it.
a repeal and a replace,
Yeah.
technically Karen doesn't have to come to us with any strikes or highlights. It's just a clean, new
Well,
policy.
and I mean, I have edits on this, so I could always look back at those.
Okay. Is that okay with you, Karen?
That's beautiful.
Okay.
I prefer it, but, okay, perfect. Okay, clean copy. All right. Well, the good news is when we move on, if you're ready, to 521.1.
We sure are.
This one's easier. This is a new policy, and again, the status is recommended from the New Hampshire School Board Association. And it is pretty much, except for taking out, it's not geared towards a student per se, if you will. It's obviously more towards an employee. We don't have an employee manual yet. I know there's work being done and it's been going on for a little while. But again, the policy purpose is pretty much the same. We make sure that we help employees receive accommodations related to their pregnancy and conditions. But this also brings in the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act regarding pregnant employees and employees with pregnancy-related conditions, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, and the ADA, and also Board Policy 161 in that first paragraph. Okay. The definitions is funny because they did include reasonable accommodations to your first. So if you want to put that in the other one, I suppose we could for consistency. But under definitions, let me look at what you all have. Went ahead and just see personnel. Started with, instead of keeping it so redundant, it should say pregnancy in the quotes, period, and then under the PWFA, which is defined above, so we can use the acronym the second time, pregnancy and childbirth refer to, and then it goes on to the current pregnancy, past pregnancy, potential or intended pregnancy, so on and so forth. Again, a format question. I'm not used to seeing the semicolons. Do you think those are correct after, I would have put the commas in? Current pregnancy, comma, past pregnancy, comma, and
Yeah, that's weird. I don't think they
Well,
both
so
got
what
this.
happens is when you have a series inside of a series,
Yeah.
you upgrade to semicolons.
Okay.
For when you're.
That's what I was just saying.
thank you. I'm glad
I did not know.
I didn't either. I was like, well, that's not right. Okay, so leave them alone.
Racing to explain it.
Well, you two know how to have a good time
I
in
know.
grammar.
It's so fun.
Okay, related medical conditions, I then went right into it because it flowed better. Medical conditions, obviously. And then it references our lactation accommodations, which is our next policy. Reasonable accommodations.
I'm gonna take out A, so that it just starts.
Yeah,
with
I did
reasonable
go small. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I went small on the A's this time. What did I do last time? Should it be a cat?
No, I just mean this,
No,
the beginning of
this.
the sentence.
And you
Here
just,
you
you
have
just copied
related,
it from
and
the
here you
school
have
board
Yeah.
association.
Okay, so
We're
just
just
get rid
gonna,
of A.
yeah, we're just gonna correct their.
Reasonable
mistake.
accommodation? Okay, you got it. And then frequent breaks, it goes down and describes, again, I capitalized everything, I made them.
So frequent breaks under the school board association was A. So if we wanted to use the formatting, see, Cara? So it just all reasonable accommodations are listed.
Oh, yeah,
like
so it
this.
just, the frequent breaks ended up not having an A. So it should actually be
be-
A, frequent breaks, B, schedule changes.
Oh.
So the series is just a little wonky, so we'll just fix it.
Oh. Really, that is weird. Hang on a second, what did I do there? Students, personnel, let's go to personnel. Oh. Frequent, yeah, okay, got it. So we'll just redo that alphabet. Okay. And the nice thing again is may include such items as, so it doesn't say may include but not limited to, but I think that's fine as it is. That's inconsistent with what we did in the last one. Okay, then here under C on page 2, I tailored it to what we have here. You would notify the building principal first, there, if you need reasonable accommodations, the director human resources, or the employee supervisor. And then they're supposed to do that with 2 weeks in advance, so they can make accommodations without unnecessary delay.
Can
2
I
weeks in advance, because you always know 2 weeks in advance
Yeah, right.
what might happen in your ongoing
That's
pregnancy
what I thought
and
when I was
related.
reading this too, but
Okay then, in 2 weeks I might develop preeclampsia, so I think I'm gonna need to be out early. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And another question is, does
I was gonna
this,
say, Beth never told me 2 weeks in advance.
I guess I'm curious to know about if every single person employed by the district is considered an employee for purposes of this policy, and if anyone's union contracts or other contracts
That was my
flow with
question.
this in some way.
Is this in accordance with the collective bargaining agreements already
Yeah.
negotiated with the
I
various?
know it is with regard to some other provisions in here about we don't make them take time off to go pump or to breastfeed, nor do we make them make up the work. So,
So it's in line with existing contract
Correct.
language?
Correct.
And do we consider everyone that is employed by the district to be an employee for purposes of this policy? So like a part-timer?
With the same obligation to them.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Do we
Yeah.
need to define employee in any way? I mean,
it is defined in the statute, believe it or not. I pulled it for you if you need it.
look at you.
But
just
it's under
pulling
one of the
statute for
acts.
me. You're so nice.
It's, yeah, but it's more for the pump, for the New Hampshire
Lactation.
358. That's where it's
I
defined.
mean, if you guys are comfortable with it, my first thought was, does this really cover everyone? Subs, I guess it doesn't, I mean, like if I'm a substitute and I come in and I have,
But you shouldn't have to say, no, I can't sub, because
Right.
you have to pump milk.
right,
Right.
I mean,
You
I'm.
should be able to come in and sub and still be able to have a nice place to go pump milk.
Yep,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Or just pump and teach.
And then.
Yeah, just put them right in there, invisible now,
I know
actually,
it.
you could.
Yeah,
Where are we with men who may have to attend an appointment, a medical appointment?
Yeah.
That was under the parenting piece of it, and
there's
we took it out.
We took the parenting piece out.
Yeah.
So our male
this only-
employees who may need to go to a,
any employee who
Appointment.
is pregnant or who has a related medical condition.
Yeah, so you have
That
to
is
be-
what it is limited to.
Yeah.
okay.
So employee here, and again, I don't want to confuse things, but under the statute, for purposes of relating to nursing mothers, which this is a person who may be permitted, required, or directed by an employer in consideration of direct or indirect gain or profit, but shall not include any individual who volunteers. So you have to be in some sort of paid, so you have to be an employee and not a volunteer.
You could be part-time or
Yeah.
full-time, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
Yep.
Right.
All right,
Okay. All right, so where are we? Okay, the second paragraph just talks about, you can't do anything negative, obviously, if they don't accept it, an accommodation, or because they request it. Don't retaliate, coerce, dissuade, in other words, treat them nicely. If they refuse an accommodation, and are unable to perform the essential functions of the job, and there are no alternative reasonable accommodations, that just puts them on notice that we may have satisfied our obligation to provide the reasonable accommodation. Okay? Supporting documentation, again, the same thing. Necessary to determine reasonable accommodation and/or expected duration of the need. But not when it's already known, like they may have to go to the bathroom more frequently or drink more water or so on and so forth. That's consistent with what was in the other one. Okay, and then that's it.
To answer Jim's question about parenting and the male, that's all governed by their contract.
Their
and the
contract.
language in the contract that allows
That's
them
where I was
to-
gonna go
yeah.
with this, make sure that this is
Yeah.
in conjunction with the
Covered.
contract.
It's all-
So that if there's an
They need
emergency
to go-
appointment, we could tell Mr. Richards, no, you cannot leave. You cannot go to that. And you are not entitled to.
Right. We'd be in trouble.
That would be a problem.
That would be a big problem.
Mr. Richard.
It would be, yes, Mr. Richard, would be. If that's covered in the contract, then
Yeah, and it allows
okay.
them to
I
use
just
their
don't
time to-
want a principal saying,
Yeah.
Mr. Richards,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I know you have a very critical appointment next week, you can't go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Karen, in the first instance language and the reports or complaints is in this one. You took it out of the other one. Do you want to take it out of this one?
Yeah. You tell me. I don't think it's necessary, but
I don't either. I think it's odd.
Under which one, I'm sorry?
Sorry, under reports or complaints, the way
Yep.
we wrap it up is we say reports or complaints of violations of this policy should be made in the first instance.
That's what it was on the other one.
Right, but Karen removed that language from 528.
Right.
It
So
should be
to make it
consistent.
consistent with 528.1, I think we should make the sentence exactly the same. Reports or complaints of violations of
Yes.
this policy can be made
and then add 161
under board policy 415 or 161.
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna be annoying and go back to something, because my little brain's working now.
Go for it.
My little brain. So the parenting piece. So we have a 10th grader who's pregnant, and her father of her baby goes to the school as well. So she has her prenatal appointments, and he wants to go with her, which would be a wonderful thing. If we take out that accommodation, could he be marked absent? And even though he's the dad of that baby and is trying to participate in the process?
It would
He's
be
not
an
covered by the
excused
collective
it would
bargaining
be an
agreement.
excused, yeah.
Okay. No, but I'm just all, because initially when I think in parenting, I'm like, okay, well, wait, what are we talking about here? But when you think about it,
It's an excused absence.
so it wouldn't penalize them in any way?
Wouldn't be.
Okay.
It shouldn't, and then you know what, in our old guidance, in the old policy, we
Yeah.
talked about paternal
Right.
status.
Yeah.
But we veer off of it in this
Right.
go round.
Okay.
Stripping it down.
Yep,
Just want the dads to know I'm on their side.
That's right.
yep.
And
Appreciate
ideally,
it,
they
Barb.
would be able to come back to school, they'd go to the appointment. and
Yes, and come
to
back,
school.
yeah. And again, I don't see anyone not allowing this to happen, but
Right, yeah, that's a good question, Donna.
No, you never know. It'd be like, we have an exam. No. If you don't come in, you fail. Because I'm not redoing this exam. Now, we won't want that said to a
right.
young parent. of any-
All right.
So
Are there-
keeping with consistency, I am gonna ask that in the definitions of the other policy for students, that reasonable accommodations is also listed under the definitions.
I would say yes if we take out the PWFA from the definition,
Yeah,
because
'cause
this
that's
only
not related.
covers employees.
Because that's labor.
So as long as it works for students as well.
Because then I think it should be reasonable modifications, like a different word.
I mean, that is not related to students, that, the PWFA, so.
Well, we could take that
Just
out,
take
but then
that
would
out,
it still
right.
apply to
Yeah.
students? Is that?
I would say so. I mean, it's pretty basic. Seems reasonable on its face, ordinarily or in the run of cases. That's an odd way to say it.
It's weird.
Is feasible or plausible, given the specific circumstances of the position. This is
The-
like corporate speak is what this is.
Yes,
Um,
the position would be changed because they're not in a,
The problem is
Hired position.
we can't continue it into the paragraphs below because we're not gonna give,
Can we still have a definition, whether it's the same thing or not? Or is this policy coming before this policy?
it's coming after. But I agree. I think we could add into 528 a definition for reasonable accommodation, because we're gonna change all the modification terms to accommodation. So, and then we could probably do just that first sentence.
Okay.
A reasonable accommodation for purposes of this policy is an accommodation that seems reasonable on its face, is feasible or plausible given the specific circumstances of the position, period. And I don't know if you guys want examples.
we use them.
do. We have them
They're
here,
already in
though.
there.
Me and
Oh,
Under
then we're
D.
good.
them as-
Then we're good. Then we can just move that into the definition section. Perfect. Easy, easy peasy.
Okay, so Cara, reasonable accommodations for purpose of this policy is an accommodation that seems reasonable on its face,
Can we
Yep.
skip that ordinarily thing?
i.e. ordinarily or in the run of cases is feasible
Yep, it's
or
feasible,
plausible,
plausible.
given the specific circumstances.
Examples of may include, and then it's the list that's already
Okay.
in the new policy. We'll just shift it into the definition section.
Include. Okay. Got it. I think I got it. All right.
Sweet.
Okay, moving on to accommodation of lactation needs.
I would ask the chair to move to 161 and 161.1 because those will be on our agenda for April as second reads, and I don't want to,
In the interest of the time,
yeah. And
okay.
it's 6:30, so
Yep.
just trying to,
Yes, thank you. All right, with no objection, we're gonna skip 528.2 and move to 161. I would say before we meet again, Karen, if there's anything that we did to 528 or 528.1 that you think is relevant to 528.2, to go ahead and incorporate that. I'm just anticipating any,
You mean for consistency?
yeah,
Okay.
like if there just happens to be a sentence that needs to be adjusted.
Got it.
That's fine with me.
Thank you. Okay. All right. so 161 and 161.1. My apologies on this, but it's not that painful. All right. Looking at 160, we had it flipped. The changes are, the only thing I did in there were the changes from the school board. So if we're looking at 161, the changes appear in, I went back and checked all of the sites to the policies that we have that are numbered differently, but they are the same ones, so we're still in good shape. If you go down to report, complaint, and grievance procedure, number 4, there was an addition. Take a look at what you all have in front of you. 161.
I mean, I have 3D.
It's
It's on page 2, bottom
page
of page 2, 161. Yep.
Which one of these are we looking at?
And go up, oh, it's under
The one that says
1,
edit.
2,
at
3.
the
You've
top.
got
Yeah.
3. Why does she only have 3 paragraphs? Something's supposed to be okay. Reports, 3.
I go bonkers if this was my job. You know, these words.
Complaints.
Put me like in a situation, have me act out the solution.
Yeah, it's
I'll be
D.
fine.
I'm sorry, it's D, it's not 4,
We should do that.
it's 3D.
I'm gonna act out some hypotheticals. Yep, and D, I see the red.
Yep, and all they did was they added the Boy Scouts of America or other Title 36 youth group listed in Title 36, Subtitle 2, Part B of the United States Code as a patriotic society intended to serve young people under the age of 21. That was an addition.
Fantastic. I'm glad the Boy Scouts are covered. What's next?
Okay, then you go to page,
All right.
Just go.
page 6.
Let's have a jamboree. We'll all be back.
Page 6, under the Title 9, it used to say Title 9, Non-Discrimination Policy and Notice of Non-Discrimination. With the do-away of 2024 revision, that whole section got zapped. The good news is it didn't even screw up our numbering. We go right on. I was happy there.
Good news.
That's what I mean. The most important thing at the end of the day
Bad news
is the
is that we don't
semicolons
protect
and the
anyone
numbering.
from
Yeah, when you live my
discrimination.
life, that's good news.
No kidding.
Whatever. We'll
I
take
just, all of a sudden, I'm
whatever
like, oh, I feel for you
win
people.
we can get. Okay. So really, all of it.
Yes, because that was a specific notice requirement with the new 2024.
Oh, so this was added,
We added
As
it
part of
and then,
the-
correct,
No,
and
we
then
took
it
it
got
out.
zapped.
but those non-discrimination protections still exist. Title IX still exists.
It does, but we're not required to put it in here,
I see. All right.
so that one got, and so along that line, going, the last legal references on the,
But it is included in our Title
Title IX.
IX policy
Right, 415.
2020.
which again,
Right, okay.
yes.
So
I just
what
wanna make
all
sure
we're
that-
saying is that, like, these protections aren't going away.
They're just-
The required notice in 161 about policy
Right.
415 is
Right.
no longer needed. So it's
Correct.
being removed.
Yes.
There.
You're
All right.
good with that?
Okay.
And
Okay.
numbering hasn't changed.
Nope, that's the good news.
Okay.
And then on legal reference, I just added the citation for the Boy Scouts, the 34 CFR 108. And the other thing I did was, I made sure and went back because it talks about the Boy Scouts having access to our facilities. So I went back and I
That's
pulled
what
our,
came to mind for me.
I pulled
Yes.
the facility usage policy, and I'm so proud of us because under our new policy, we talked about civic groups and we named the Boy Scouts.
We were thinking
Look at
ahead.
us, I know.
You
Well,
rock.
it sounds like we weren't thinking far enough ahead because I think Kathleen still wants to bring it back, but for now.
So it's in there,
Sometimes
so
it's
we're
better
good.
to be lucky
Okay.
than good.
Okay, so those were the changes.
Beautiful.
And
161?
So this is ready as, can you make a motion then to,
We don't even,
do we need a motion to?
I don't think we do.
Okay, to
already-
bring it back?
So what will happen is on second reading, we will have to offer an amendment. Each of, everything that is redlined will be offered as an amendment upon second reading to the full board. Anyone can discuss and recommend further changes, and then we
Right, we
pass
haven't
it.
heard
Wasn't
from
this
anybody,
explained, didn't you explain this the other night?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I just want to make sure that everybody knows that this hasn't come back to committee.
To be changed.
For
just-
work,
Right,
yeah.
just to update it, yeah, according to.
It's like the first round, we're passing it through to make sure we feel good about it. I think we're fine. fine.
Okay.
Is that everybody's fine?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm fine.
No one feels the need to bring it back to
I
committee
just
for
want to make
further
sure
work?
that the committee, the full board knows that this committee went through it and approved
Yep.
those changes,
And
that's
I'll
all.
explain
That's
it.
the only reason why I
I'll
said
explain
it.
it.
Yep,
Yeah.
okay.
Alrighty.
Just trying to follow.
So 161.1.
Procedure, I know. It's a weird procedure,
Yeah,
because
okay.
it's already been introduced, so we
Right,
can't really
right.
do much about it.
But see, people are changing things that
Yeah.
we're in the process of actually passing while we are still.
Well, it's frustrating, because no sooner had we got this all squared away and we're getting messages of change, it is.
We're not gonna talk about next year's
Yeah.
pass on this, but yep, that'll happen.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, 161.1. Again, it's a pain, but it's not horrible. Definition section, D, on page 2, they added complaint as a definition. So complaint is there, and then the 4 elements to come with it. What is the different types, discrimination, harassment, any kinds of other complaints. So I added that section there. The other thing they did throughout the new policy, their write-up, is they keep referring to a position called a human rights officer, and I talked to Kathleen about this, and we don't have one. That's what the Title IX coordinator is, and
Right.
we talked.
We
so-
got rid of this before.
Yeah.
Because we don't have one.
Right.
We discussed this.
I put it in there and then I zapped it, so you could see that they put it in there. But since it's not applicable to us,
We're
I
just gonna
did
take
take
it
it out.
out. We're just gonna take it out.
Yep. And then on section E on page 4, because it was defined, I guess, in the definition section, and I know sometimes we don't like to do this, I capitalized
Instead of-
complaint as they did, and grievance process in the paragraphs under E, where they're red. Same thing under F. Under G, there were issues with regard to the appeal, where there's an added sentence there that the superintendent that the designee may determine to remand the matter to the investigator for further investigation or consideration as part of the level 2 appeal. That was added by New Hampshire School Board. And then under level 3 on page 6, it outlines the reasons or the grounds by which somebody could appeal. The 3 grounds. And those were added back in. Then the new on page 7, this is new language about if you receive an appeal, you'll confer, you all as a school board after a level 3, you can confer with your attorney for guidance, and then it talks about 91A to Roman numeral 2B, you have to do it within 21 days, and where it falls in. Then again, the added in language in the following paragraph about the board hearing officer will issue a written decision within 30 days after the hearing or submission of information, in case there's anything submitted afterwards. Capitalized complaint, struck the language, that had been moved forward. 1 through 4 appears elsewhere in the policy, so it
Right.
was
So
stricken.
it actually looks like a change, but it's really not. You've just moved it.
Correct.
So I just need to make sure that we explain that.
And then under confidentiality, methane J on page 8, code of conduct was added. Student, under L, student conduct, codes of student conduct were added, and we only have one student code of conduct, but the middle school, the elementary school, in their parent handbooks, they talk a lot about students, so that's why I left it plural, codes of student conduct, even though we only have one policy on code of student conduct. They added the Title IX coordinator to contact law enforcement, one of those people, when necessary, if there's criminal behavior. And that was it. I didn't play with any other language.
So I will just say that the changes, I think, have been made to, if you look at the 161 before the edits, this has been renumbered. So all of the sections and subsections are numbered, but the edits were made to a previous version that didn't have the right numbering. So what changes the edits that we did make need to be incorporated into the most recent version. that the board has seen, but I think that'll be an easy
Format, in other words.
fix, yeah.
Okay.
So like, for instance, in the definitions section of our edited version, they're not numbered. But in the first reading version that has been formatted for its final presentation
Right,
is
they're numbered.
numbered. So we just need to make sure that the changes that you've made are
Don't-
put into the final version, which I can make sure that you have.
Okay.
Because I might have given it right to
To-
Bridget.
Okay,
So-
well, that's fine, I'll let her know we've talked about it, but, okay, okay, got it. So it's a formatting. Okay.
Can I make a comment not related to the policy?
Yeah, what's up?
We recently received, and I'm going to address this tomorrow night, Wednesday night at the budget meeting, but we recently received some feedback around budget and the position of the Title IX coordinator, Title IX compliance officer. We didn't need to. We could, could that be a position that we would want to remove? And I just want to say that the policies tonight, just the policies this evening, are a classic example of why this position is so important. It's really helped us with good policy. It's helped us with helping kids understand their rights as well as our staff, and being able to comply to complaints and grievances, investigations, and it has been critical. And it's been, in my opinion, based on my work here, these last 5 years, it's been a really the reason why we've been able to move forward, take care of business, and do it in a way that respects everyone's rights. So I know some people think that we can eliminate some of these because they're new, they're kind of new positions. You never heard about these positions 10, 15 years ago. But they have ultimately shown us to be a real strength of the district in addressing these kinds of rights for kids and teachers and everybody, all of our staff. So I know it's a little bit of an opinion, but kind of made me realize tonight how important that position is.
Well, to concur with that, you can live in a house and not understand infrastructure. That's why you call a carpenter when something goes wrong with a wall. And I think these kinds of policies that create a safety net for an umbrella over 9 million things that happen day to day. Not every employee in the district knows where to find a stud in the wall to hang the proper poster. Do you know what I mean? Like, to me, that's just a real live example of it would all crumble if we all didn't really know how to follow the infrastructure policies and how do we go forward with this. I mean, our conversations tonight, there's 50 ways to do it correctly, but what is correct? And that's where Title IX person comes in.
Well, and to expand on that too, is that we can just see how much change happens with each administration from year after year. Someone's got to stay on top of that. That can't be.
Can't relearn that every time
You
a new
can't
hire comes
relearn
in.
it.
Yeah.
And this is not everything that Karen does either. And this is hard work in itself.
Yeah, I agree. And not only is it incumbent upon us to protect our students and staff to the full extent of the law and make them aware of their rights, and having a person who understands that, on a deep level, like, not only that is important, but when we aren't diligent, then we are at risk of major lawsuits. And so if we're talking about saving money, having a position that protects our interests is, I can imagine, much cheaper than what could come our way if we didn't do this right.
So
We
thank you,
added,
Karen.
we added the Title IX coordinator after the Howie Leon. So, and as a recommendation in response to that, when things go well and nothing happens and nothing is needed, yes, it may look like it's a not necessary position. However, it's the position that keeps things from going wrong and gives us the format
We want
and the
it to be
procedure
invisible.
Yeah.
Prevention.
Yeah.
to
Keyword.
correct and head off things before they become an issue. There's no way I would want to eliminate
no.
this position.
Can't go back.
Yes.
Well, we remember, don't go anywhere.
Right. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Clearly, we all have
Yeah, we also
supportive opinions on that, and feel free to bring that up in the full board.
So we have 12 minutes to do lactation.
Let's do it. We can do it.
I was gonna say, how many changes could there be?
I think we can do it. Thank you for, those were important to get.
Yeah, no, that was
I-
nice.
I
Appreciate that.
appreciate the change in the agenda.
All right, lactation. See, I crumpled all my papers together. Sorry about that. All right. Lactation.
I lived within walking distance of both schools I taught at when I was going through all this, so I just would go zip home and zip back.
Take care of business.
Or my mother would come with Molly sometimes.
Okay, so this is a new policy for us, and it is a priority required by law policy. So it's not even recommended, we need to have one. And I wanted to point out just a couple, there's 3 different things that are listed in the policy that can be confusing, so I wanted to look them up and give you a little guidance. There's the Pump Act, that is a federal statute, and it recommends a proactive, it's a practice under both the federal and the state from non-discrimination laws. Okay, and one of the things it talks about is nursing mothers versus, and this is a decision you'll have to make because in the go-by, we have nursing mothers, or we can call them people/person with breastfeeding lactation needs. Whether or not they give us a choice. I meant to look that up this afternoon as to who that would cover. Then we have the New Hampshire House Bill 358, which requires employers to adopt a policy regarding expression of milk. It excludes breastfeeding, whereas the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act protects for pregnancy-related conditions post-delivery. So there's 3 different laws that are mentioned throughout this policy, but all of them with the same general purpose of providing a supportive environment for lactation or lactation-related needs. That's the purpose part of this. And the time frame, we want to make sure, first of all, that we provide reasonable times and suitable spaces for people who need lactation-related needs during school hours for up to, the statute says 1 year, up to 1 year. And it's in accordance with here in this policy, lactation is expression of milk by manual or mechanical means, medical conditions related to lactation, and other lactation-related needs. Okay,
Isn't breastfeeding a lactation-related need?
I would say so.
Thank you.
Can't discriminate against people who are breastfeeding or expressing, however you want to say it, and we should provide reasonable assistance. And accommodation notice and plans, again, this is where we ask the employee to give us, before they come back, if they are breastfeeding or they need a place to pump, give us notice so we can find a place suitable for them to do so. Bathrooms are not considered suitable. We need a room, and it's, I'll get into that in a few minutes, that's suitable for that kind of opportunity. We need to have scheduled breaks, and if there's problems under the accommodation of notice and plans, if there are problems, the kids can't get to a place to pump or an employee can't, then they should consult with me. This is part of my training now. I talk about, we are working on a policy. We go down to number 3, reasonable time to express milk during the school day. They should have a minimum of 3 opportunities. I believe it is 30 minutes within every 3 hours. We do not charge our employees. I checked with Michelle today, Michelle Guerin, about is there anything in the collective bargaining agreement or anything that prohibits us? Do we pay them? Do we make them make up the time? She said no. Under the ADA, we go ahead, we let them
Just do it.
just do it and don't make up the time, okay? Suitable private areas for lactation, as I said, not a bathroom. It can be temporary or permanent. They have to provide privacy, and without people being able to just come through, bust in, within a reasonable walk. And you need to have an electrical outlet, appropriate seating, surface sufficient to place a breast pump on. You can read them all here under 4. You need to be close to water, refrigerator for storage if necessary, and I didn't know whether you wanted to put this in there, but some workplaces will provide a lactation pump for shared use, and you bring your own wipes and you can wipe them. Up to you all. I don't really recommend it, but you can do that. And then
You're shaking your head.
I mean, there's liability with that. Who's
yeah,
responsible for
infection
cleaning
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then the responsibility of the person with the needs is outlined under the next section. Again, the notice. Give us time to find a place. Wipe down the surface when you're done, and then provide your own supplies. So that's assuming we didn't put G in there.
Yeah.
Prohibited conduct. We don't violate their privacy purposely, and we don't discriminate. We don't retaliate for them doing so. Taking advantage in accordance with policies 415 and 528. Dissemination of the policy. We don't have an employee handbook, as I said earlier. We do have a student and parent handbook, but if we have a new employee who's coming to work for us, once we put this policy into effect, we're supposed to hand them a copy of the written policy. And so those are the
highlights.
the whole policy. That's it.
So we don't have a definition section. Just want to make note of that. I don't know if it's needed in terms of accommodation. What we're calling nursing mothers, the reasonable accommodation. Just pointing that out. And then I'm wondering if the person or people with lactation needs is a term that is defined in any of the acts that we're referring to.
40. I'm looking. I did not see it defined. The only thing that they said in the notes was that, highlighted in blue. Okay. The language of this policy has been standardized to use the term, quote, nursing mothers, but such language is highlighted in blue to easily facilitate replacement of that term with people/persons with lactation needs if a district so desires.
Okay, so it's flexible.
It is.
And then my other just sort of general comment is it's kind of, we're lumping students and staff together. And I'm just curious, B isn't relevant to students, really. A nursing mother should contact the building principal, school nurse, and their supervisor at least 2 weeks before.
Or their supervisor.
So do we feel that this covers both students and staff sufficiently? Do we treat them differently, or are they pretty much, this is across the board what everybody's gonna get?
I think should be across the board.
Okay. We don't need to divide it into
I think we do.
the students
we
or.
need to divide it
Okay.
up. I mean, obviously, the student might not have a supervisor.
Right.
um,
But to
That's
Liz's
why
point,
it's
it does say or,
Working
yeah.
and making
Yeah.
sure the nurse understands their needs is
Mhm.
important. I mean, and that's where they'll go. They'll
Okay.
absolutely go there.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you care? Do you want to go with nursing mothers or people with lactation needs? I can run that. I could do a little more research on it and figure out. Again, it's permissive. It's not required.
Right. I mean, I would prefer persons with lactation need or people with lactation needs, just being sensitive to those who may need to pump, even if they did not have a
Yeah,
child.
I would agree with that.
Oh, yeah.
If we're talking late-term miscarriage, adoption.
Well, I was thinking that too.
There
Or
are
maybe a
people
wet
who,
nurse even.
right,
Yeah,
there are
okay.
people that do have lactation needs.
Just
that-
students or staff with lactation needs.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I feel like that just kind of covers all the bases, personally.
Okay. Very correct.
It could also be nursing mothers and any student or staff with lactation needs, but I think one is
It just
fine.
keeps, we can just keep those terms
No, I
just
know.
wrong. But other than that, this looks fine to me. I mean, I have to assume that this is what you're doing in practice
Yeah, it is
already.
pretty much,
This
right.
just reflects
Right.
what's happening
In the schools now,
buildings.
right.
And this is based on language recommended by the New Hampshire School Board Association.
Right.
Correct.
So,
The only thing I guess, and funny, we're going to be meeting with the principals tomorrow morning, is that it says that we should have a room in each of our buildings.
Of
We-
course,
So,
Can't.
yeah. Yeah.
So you, each building, I mean, I can picture lots of them in my head. There are several rooms at Beaver Meadow School that somebody could go
Yeah.
express breast milk. And same with the high school and the middle school.
My sense is if we ask, they probably already have one, but
They
it
do.
wouldn't be a bad thing
You
just
can
to
mention
say.
it tomorrow.
I guess the only other thing would be if we wanted to have a refrigerator.
That actually was the one thing that stood out to me too, is
It's in the policy.
it's
It's
in
in.
the
Yeah.
policy.
It's a nice.
It seems to me that we had this issue already this year, and one of the principals got a small refrigerator.
I was just
Very
gonna say,
easy.
I have
Did
a
that.
feeling some people
Because I
might
remember them
be
saying
upset
to
with the
me,
food
I
refrigerator.
needed to have it close by, and you can't put it in the staff refrigerator,
Right.
so they had a small refrigerator.
Oh, I
It
did that
doesn't have
years
to be
ago.
really
I think
large.
Matt went out and bought it, you know,
It
one of
works
those
quite well. It's a
ones
smaller
that you
one.
take to college with you.
I'm telling you.
It wasn't milk
My-
in it, but.
Do we have enough rooms in our larger buildings, such as a high school, that multiple people would be able to be accommodated? And I'm sure that we can,
I think we
within the
have
policy, have
multiple
temporary
rooms.
rooms, but I just want to know, has that ever been an issue, or? Because
Not to
you
my
could have,
knowledge.
So the rooms in
Four
the newer
people.
building have, I taught health in the newer building, and every room has a significant, an office-sized closet. Every classroom in that whole front end of that building. So teachers in that building could simply lock themselves into their office and, you know, and they have, it's private, nobody can get in. The older part of the high school that's not quite the case, so it might be a bit more difficult, but I would imagine floor to floor, there would be,
But even some of the common rooms now, the common areas, there's very small rooms that are available there
Yeah,
for
off of
conferences,
commons.
off
Yeah,
of
yeah, right.
commons.
Well,
So
and-
we would use those.
yeah.
Yeah, and in between me and the school psychologist,
Right.
we have a conference room.
Right.
It's lockable both doors.
Yeah.
The old theater where you bought your tickets.
Yeah.
It's blocked off. That would make a perfect space for somebody.
Right.
okay.
And they
I
need
will
to
check
have,
with
at
the
minimum, an
principals
electrical
tomorrow.
outlet,
And they all
appropriate
do, yep,
seating,
yep.
Yeah. And the nice thing is there's a bathroom right across the
Shelf.
hall.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's good place.
that would be a
a
good
sink
place.
with running water,
Yeah.
or be reasonable proximity to one.
Good.
Yeah, we just need to make sure we're meeting all of the needs. Not an extension cord that's run down the hall and under the door and stuff.
I mean, that's fine.
Have you seen the pods in the hospitals?
Yeah.
At the
Those are cool.
VA, they have these little
Airports have them too.
pods. They're the cutest thing. It's like a little thing right in the middle. No windows, no nothing. You just go in, the light
So-
goes on, and you stay there.
It's a temporary,
And it's awful.
yeah, it's
Oh, is
a
it
little.
awful? Is it awful? Oh, I'm
Yes.
I
sorry.
was saying, like, all these, like, isolative pods are.
And you're saying that people should be able to freely lactate as needed.
And look out the window
Or
at
like-
the Cardinal and
Right,
the
you're like
branch.
No,
stuck
being
in this
like
office, like anxious
pushed
to
off.
get back to work.
Hey everyone, I'm going into the pod. Guess what I'll be doing?
Right. Nobody think about
I mean,
it.
if there was a lounge chair and there was a TV, I mean.
I would never leave. Might
Not in-
consider having more babies.
Thank you, but not in this budget.
No, I'm saying,
So there'll be no nursing pods.
I'm just saying in general, I don't care what room I'm in, I don't wanna be in a room, like, that's.
Yeah, back to business real quick. So I'm not recommending any motions to the full board on any of these tonight, just because I think we can send 528.2, but again, it would be odd to send it without the full packet.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So I'm gonna say, please bring back clean copies or amended copies of 528, 28.1, and 28.2. We will not see 161 or 161.1 again, because we will see that at the full board for second read. Is there any other business you want to discuss?
Well, I may, given how the first three fall out, I may try to bring several of the ones for future to the next board meeting,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Yep.
Electronic signature is really easy. Crowdfunding could take more time, so we'll see how it flows. But
Okay.
I'd like to bring another one when we meet on the 31st.
Okay, that sounds great. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned at 7:03.
This is actually a really fun committee,
Yeah.
because I have to be honest.